You know that feeling, right? That awful, queasy, head-spinning misery you get on a boat or even just a winding car ride? Well, that's motion sickness. And it's this bizarre phenomenon that's been bugging people since, get this, the time of the ancient Greeks. So today we're going to unravel why our bodies have such a strange, dramatic reaction to something so normal. All right, let's just cut to the chase. The big question is, why does a totally harmless car ride make you feel like you've literally been poisoned? It seems completely backward, a total overreaction by your body. But, believe it or not, there's a surprisingly logical, almost brilliant explanation hidden deep inside our evolutionary code. So, to solve this mystery, we first have to understand what's actually happening inside our bodies. And here's the wild part, the real kicker. Motion sickness isn't a bug, it's a feature. A really, really old survival program that's running exactly as it was designed to. Okay, so the fancy scientific term for this is kinesis. But what that really means is pretty simple. Your brain has this sort of mental map of how you're supposed to be moving. And when what you're actually doing doesn't line up with that map, your internal alarm system just goes haywire. And oh yeah, we all know how this goes down. It might start with something innocent, like a yawn, but then it quickly ramps up to a cold sweat. And then before you know it, bam, you're hit with that overwhelming wave of nausea. Your body is practically screaming that something is very, very wrong. So now, let's put on our detective hats and head to the scene of the crime, the brain itself. Why is it getting so confused? Well, the problem is with its star witnesses, your senses, because they're all telling completely different stories. The main suspect in this whole investigation is something called the sensory conflict theory. This is what happens when your eyes and your inner ear, which is like your body's incredible little built-in gyroscope for balance, are sending your brain totally contradictory messages. It's basically a heated argument between your senses, and your poor brain is stuck right in the middle. Think of it this way. Your brain keeps this massive library, a neural store of every single movement you've ever made. So when you're in a car trying to read a book, your inner ear is shouting, "Hey, we're moving, we're turning, we're bouncing around." But your eyes, which are just focused on the page, are calmly reporting, "Nope, everything's perfectly still here." Your brain frantically flips through its library, finds nothing that matches the sensory chaos, and just hits the big red panic button. Okay, so we know what's happening. A sensory mismatch, a glitch in the matrix. But that doesn't explain the biggest question of them all, the why. Why does our body react so violently? I mean, really, stop and think about it. From a survival point of view, becoming weak, dizzy, and sick on a moving boat, or, a getaway chariot, makes absolutely zero sense. There has to be something deeper going on. And this, right here, is where we get to the absolute heart of the mystery. And here it is. The toxin defense hypothesis. This brilliant idea suggests that the whole brain circuit that causes motion sickness didn't evolve for travel at all. No way. It evolves to protect us from being poisoned. For our ancient ancestors, if your senses suddenly went haywire, it was almost always a giant red flag that you'd just eaten some kind of toxic berry or mushroom. So, your modern brain is getting totally tricked by this ancient instinct. First, it detects the sensory conflict from the car ride. Second, your primal brain, which has zero concept of a car, interprets this signal as a classic sign of poisoning. And finally, it launches its one-size-fits-all anti-poison protocol. Make you feel sick so you stop eating, and then make you vomit to get the toxin out. It's an ancient, life-saving feature being triggered by a completely modern false alarm.
And the evidence for this is actually pretty convincing. Think about it. Babies, with their super-controlled diets, almost never get motion sick. But kids between 2 and 12, the prime age for running around, exploring, and sticking weird things in their mouths, they're the most likely to get sick. Then, as we become adults, we kind of build up a tolerance. This whole pattern perfectly mirrors our risk of being poisoned over our lifetimes. It's a perfect evolutionary match. But this ancient glitch isn't just a problem in cars and on boats. As our technology has raced forward, the glitch has evolved right along with it. In fact, it's followed us straight into the digital world. Say hello to its digital cousin, cyber sickness. And it's wild because it's basically motion sickness, but in reverse. In a windowless cabin on a ship, you feel the motion, but you don't see it. In a virtual reality headset, you see yourself flying down a roller coaster, but your body doesn't feel a thing. The inputs are flipped, but the result is exactly the same. Your brain's ancient anti-poison alarm starts blaring. And there are a few things in the virtual world that can really crank the nausea dial to 11. The longer you're in VR, the more that sensory conflict signal builds up. A super wide field of view, laggy hardware that can't keep up with your head movements, and especially using a joystick to glide around. Those are all major triggers for that false alarm.
So, we might be stuck with this ancient programming, but here is the good news. Now that we understand how the system works, we can actually learn how to hack it. Let's look at a few ways you can turn off this false alarm.
Now, for sure, there are effective medications out there. Things like scopolamine and certain antihistamines can definitely help. They basically work by chemically turning down the volume on those conflicting signals. But the downside is they often come with side effects, like making you super drowsy. So what if you're looking for a drug-free solution?
This is where a few clever behavioral hacks come into play, and their goal is simple: get your senses back on the same page. Staring at the horizon forces your eyes to see the same motion your inner ear is feeling. Being the driver works because you're predicting every single turn, updating your brain's movement library in real time. And if all else fails, just close your eyes. It takes one of the arguing witnesses, your vision, completely out of the equation.
And get this, the future of these motion sickness hacks, it might just be electric. A recent study looked at something called galvanic vestibular stimulation. It's a fancy way of saying they use tiny, painless electrical currents on the skin right behind your ears. This directly helps recalibrate your sense of balance, and in the study, it cut motion sickness symptoms by an incredible 26%.
And we are absolutely going to need these new solutions because self-driving cars are about to make motion sickness a much, much bigger problem for everyone. I mean, when we all become passengers, free to read or work or watch movies, we'll be creating that classic sensory conflict on a massive global scale.
So when you boil it all down, motion sickness isn't just some random inconvenience. It's this fascinating clash between our ancient caveman biology and our super modern world. Our brains are just running a brilliant survival program that was designed for a totally different time.
Which leaves us with one final fascinating question to chew on. As technology like VR and autonomous cars keeps racing forward, will our ancient brains ever catch up? Will we as a species eventually evolve past this? Or will we be forever stuck having to find new ways to hack this ancient life-saving glitch?